2.5 miles on the bottom of the North Atlantic, the Royal Mail ship Titanic sleeps peacefully in her underwater tomb. The footage you are about to see, courtesy of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, was taken in the early 2000s during a research and scientific survey of the Titanic wreck. Here is the raw, nearly uncut footage, just a small portion of the over 24 hours of wreck footage obtained from this one particular dive. The footage, taken from submersibles Mir 1 and Mir 2, will give the viewer an unrestricted view of the wreck of Titanic as never before seen. This footage, and others like it recently acquired by Storied Treasures, is going to be featured prominently in an upcoming Titanic documentary entitled Titanic: Memories from the Deep. Meanwhile, an internet archive is currently underway to release the footage to the public once and for all. The footage, though public domain, is not easily accessible and has been acquired and used with permission from the appropriate departments. We're coming in over the bow of the Titanic. Much of what you are about to see will be a culmination of footage overlaid to give you as unobstructed a view of the wreck and unbroken as possible. So here we have the submersible, and you can hear the chatter from the submersible pilots and the respective scientists who are inside. The camera is looking at the port or left side of the Titanic, and if you look very carefully in the bottom of the screen, you can see how deeply the Titanic is buried in the mud. Her center anchor in the middle is clearly visible, as well as the main port anchor just above the mud line. The anchor should be approximately 60 feet off the ground, but now, as you can see, it's mere feet off the ground, the bow having embedded itself in the ocean floor after its long fall from the surface above on April 15, 1912, approximately 2:20 a.m.
Well, they said that aft fluke was cleaned off, and it's not as much growth on that as the forward fluke, but I don't. It doesn't look like it's been cleaned or anything.
As the submersible rises up to the railing, we are going to begin what will excite many people, a flyover of the Titanic wreck. Starting our tour of the Titanic, we, of course, start with the bow. In this very up-close and personal view of the outermost edge of the anchor crane. The bow and stern section lie 2.5 miles down, or 12,460 feet below the ocean surface. The ship lies in two pieces, approximately 1,900 feet apart. The stern section, having swung around, faces the opposite direction as the bow. As we travel up and over the anchor crane, we come across Titanic's massive steel chains. Each link approximately weighs in at 200 pounds. The anchor chains are still fully in place and, even today, firmly hold Titanic's massive anchors to her bow. passing over the #1 cargo hatch on the forward forecastle deck. Below this open hatch, Titanic's numerous cargo spaces, and just 2 decks or 3 decks below, the third-class open space where, on the evening of Saturday, April the 13th, the passengers in third class were having a party. The rambunctious rabble, as they were called by one or two, were told to keep the party and the noise to a minimum. Needless to say, the third-class passengers had every reason to celebrate, for soon the Titanic would arrive in New York, and they would have reached their destination, the Promised Land, a destination many of them would never reach. Following our journey aft, or towards the stern or rear of the wreck, we come across a series of winches. They lay beneath the fallen forward mast. And we are passing over the #2 cargo/bunker hatch, which goes down to the ship's mailroom and cargo stores. A small, twisted piece of steel can be seen laying across the fallen mast, and this is all that remains of the crow's nest where, in 1912, Frederick Fleet first saw the iceberg. Original 1911 footage of Titanic's twin sister, near twin sister, Olympic, shows the area as it appeared back in 1912. The White Star Line was particularly proud of these massive electric cargo cranes, which effortlessly loaded the passengers' baggage into the cargo holds located just forward. The area you see in the footage is identical to the place we are currently flying over.
Alright, look at the window to get that first person. Oh, man.
As we fly over the B-deck open promenade, the doors and windows you see lead into first-class luxury suites. Ocean-facing, they fetched a pretty premium in 1912. As one can well imagine, they were far from being the most expensive cabins on the ship.
The whole collapse of the...
Rising up, we approach the Adac forward-facing promenade.
You see the rivets are gone. I mean, when you see these plates collapse, the rivets are...
It was here that Father Francis Brown snapped this picture of a crew member off duty as the ship approached Ireland.
We can get a close-up of that later. Okay, yeah, good.
Rising above this, we now see the remains of the bridge floor. That thin strip of metal sticking straight out is all that remains of the bridge flooring that once housed Titanic's wheel, engine order telegraphs, and other assorted instruments. The entire structure having been knocked away during the final plunge. However, located just behind the bridge was the wheelhouse, where, to this day, Titanic's telemotor control still remains. It was here at 11:40 p.m., April 14th, 1912, that Quartermaster Hitchens attempted to avoid a collision with the iceberg after being given orders, hard a starboard, full speed astern, by First Officer William Murdoch.
It's like part of the engine.
As we move along Titanic's ruined upper works, our sub travels towards the massive hole caused by the #1 funnel collapse.
Well, I mean, straight below us almost. Yeah, just a shadow of it.
As we approach the base of the funnel, a crushed ventilator can be seen, as well as a grating. It was here that Second Officer Charles Lightoller narrowly averted death. As the ship went down, the forward expansion joint, which was allowed the ship to flex at sea, separated. The motion caused number 1 funnel to fall, missing him by inches.
Oh, yeah. Probably a vent cover, because that's now the stack number 1.
Yeah.
Coming open. Nice shot.
Passing over the fiddlies, gratings, air intakes, and ducts, we come across 2 skylights. The first skylight you see before you actually leads into the officer's washroom. The second skylight belongs to Titanic's wireless room. It was here on April the 14th and 15th, 1912, operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride desperately sent out calls for assistance. Between the messages of CQD and SOS, their names would go down in infamy in Titanic, maritime, naval, and oceanographic history. It is worthy of note, though it should come as no surprise, that the Titanic received many warnings of ice prior to her collision. However, given the circumstances of the time, many of the warnings were ignored. But that is a story for another time. Approaching this massive hole in the upper deck that goes down several stories, we have reached the signature of Titanic, the Grand Staircase. This open pit, which goes down several decks, boat deck, A deck, B deck, C deck, D deck, and E deck, was of lush opulence. Though the staircase is now gone, this animation clearly shows the beauty that once was. And this is a photograph of Titanic's sister Olympic, which had an identical staircase. The Olympic-class liners, of which the Olympic, Titanic, Gigantic, which became Britannic, were members, the signature White Star Trio were some of the most beautiful ocean liners ever built. Called floating palaces, they were meant to dominate the North Atlantic passenger trade. Of the 3, only one would survive to live to the end of her career, the Olympic. Moving aft, we come across the spot where Titanic tore herself apart on April the 15th, 1912. Here, quite dramatically, the decks drop away, almost as if cut by a guillotine. Every deck collapsed one atop the other and created the fold during the final plunge after the ship struck the bottom.
Are we over?
As Titanic's stern soared higher and higher into the air, incredible stresses and strains were put on this particular area of the ship. At approximately 2:18, her lights flickered out and she broke. She split straight down to the keel, and the stern came back near level. However, the 2 sections of the ship were still attached at the double bottom, and as the bow took its final plunge into the abyss, it pulled the stern with it until finally the great ship was gone. Here in this area, as previously stated, deck upon deck sits pancaked one atop the other. In the center left of your screen, you see a small air vent. This air vent and motor housing was once on the platform for the raised roof of the lounge, behind which the ship's compass platform used to be. The circular edges of the steel originally contained the deck house for funnel number 3. Titanic, of course, had 4 of them. In this animation, you can see clearly not only the area of the break, but the manner in which each deck has collapsed one atop the other, creating the devastation that you see before you. Moving down along the hull into this area of ragged debris, we come across a familiar sight. In the very bottom of the ship, Titanic's boilers still sit. There were 29 boilers. On the night of the disaster, all boilers had been allegedly lit. There is reason to doubt this, given Titanic's speed and the fact that she was not yet up to full power at the time of her collision with the iceberg.
They've done pairs back to back. Imagine what a whole lot of things like those things.
Yeah, the heat is amazing.
Coming back across the ship, we return once again to the iconic bow, the forward cargo hatch plainly visible. There are many more hours of footage taken from this expedition of the bow of Titanic, but this is not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to take you, the viewer, on a basic overview of the Titanic wreck, with footage previously unavailable. As we continue our trek towards the bow, if you look closely in the lower left, you can see a capstan with a plaque from the Explorers Club that I believe was placed on there by Dr. Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic in 1985.
Okay.
Moving out and away from the bow, we swing the sub around. As we come back around, we elect to pass the bow and go across the debris field. When the Titanic broke herself apart, she drained all form of debris upon the ocean floor, and as we make our way towards the crumpled stern section, we pass through this field of debris and see what there is to see. Please note, this footage of the debris field encompasses less than 1/3 of the footage that has been revealed.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
hundreds of them.
Goodness. This must have been the kitchen.
Yeah.
Here, in the debris field, thousands upon thousands of everyday objects lie. Cups, plates, saucers, bottles of champagne, Pieces of wreckage and debris from the doomed liner lay scattered across the ocean floor like pickup sticks. Lumps of coal, tile, and pieces of iron riveting and steel plating are all over the place.
Look at that fish. You can't see it. Very big. Is it alive?
No, I'm sure.
It doesn't look like it. It's not moving.
As we explore the debris field, a large section of Titanic's hull comes into view. This pile, previously unidentified, has recently been found to come from the midsection of Titanic. As Titanic broke apart, she technically broke in three, her midsection flying apart during the breakup and subsequent implosion of the stern.
Exceptionally confusing. That's what makes this task particularly challenging. That's why they gave it to
What
us.
we are looking at now, as you can see the metal beams and rivets, this is the ceiling of a large compartment or space that has been flipped upside down and crushed.
A fragment, but not quite.
The only evidence of what this once was lies in the fact that there was a stairwell opening just below. As for the rest of the debris, there is little to be recognized.
The position of this. Yeah.
But maybe this is some stuff. But I think this is a very big fragment. This is very big fragment. This is not stair.
Very big piece. Is this the third piece, Victor?
Oh.
The third piece, do you think?
Mm-hmm.
update yet on the position. We must still be. So it's just south of transponder 9. South of stern. South of stern. Okay.
Oh, very big cube. Color metal.
As we approach the stern section, debris gets heavier, concentrations larger, and the manner of debris almost akin to a building that has exploded and scattered its contents over a small area. Clearly visible, one of the stern electric cargo cranes. Its boom contorted and completely out of alignment, now lying face first on the ocean floor. Just in front of it, a large water tank.
Big pieces are hauled. Here's one of the cranes.
This is cranes, yes.
Is this stern then?
Maybe.
Oh.
Victor, voice is on, right? Voice recording is on. What we hear is being caught.
Well, maybe killed us.
No. For the microphone in the sub.
Ah, in the sub?
Yeah.
Yes, here.
Okay.
Here.
Very good. So George, whatever we say, we can be
Oh,
recorded
okay,
and annotate
okay.
with the film.
Oh, look, is that the crane you meant over
Yes.
there? It's huge.
This is one of the aft deck cranes.
Now, is this a stern yet, or is this still a fragment?
This is still a fragment. There's bottles down there, a mix of galleons.
As we approach Titanic's mangled stern,
I saw what looked like some
the
furniture.
devastation becomes apparent. The stern section no longer resembles its former self. Originally housing second and third class passengers, as well as cargo, refrigeration, the stern is mangled and nearly unrecognizable. Through these windows, the open promenade deck, now crushed and broken beyond recognition.
Lifeboats, Adac.
I think I saw one earlier, but I
A
didn't-
deck has become B deck, C deck has become F deck. The latter has become the boat deck. The stern section is chaos in every sense of the word. But even here, amid the devastation of the stern, we can still find traces of the great liner she once was. As the camera tilts to the right, we see a familiar sight. Here, on the aft section of the boat deck and A-deck promenade, the ship's mast, though crumpled, is still attached. The exact area you are seeing in 1912 is the area here. The deck house housing the mast with those twin windows is no longer around. It has been crushed upon itself. Two decks have become one. To the left of the mast can be barely seen one of the Titanic's lifeboat davits. Titanic carried 16 lifeboats as well as 4 emergency lifeboats known as collapsibles, for a total of 20, with space for approximately 1,200 people. She was meant to carry over 3,000. This twisted structure coming into view is all that's left of the boat deck second-class entrance on the port side. That wooden curve archway on the doorway plainly visible in this 1912 photograph to the far right. The Titanic is a ghost ship, a ship of memories, no longer a ship of dreams. But even then, she still remembers.